The date is December 6, 1991. While the ice of the Cold War had long since melted and the once superpower Soviet Union stood on the brink of collapse, a press conference held at the Soviet consulate in San Francisco hosted a topic far more chilling than the political agenda. At the podium stood Marina Popovich, a legendary Soviet Air Force colonel and test pilot nicknamed Madame Mij, with military precision and seriousness. She was preparing to show the world press a photograph classified as top secret. Colonel Marina told the members of the press that there was a reason no one knew about regarding why the Phobos, 2 spacecraft sent to explore Mars, suddenly stopped transmitting signals. When someone from the press asked how one of the Soviets' greatest space projects could simply lose its signal and what happened to the satellite, the colonel showed the photo in her hand, and the room suddenly went cold. Phobos 2 had managed to capture one last frame with its camera before disappearing. After that moment, everything changed. Welcome to Find the Truth. Perhaps the only beneficial thing the Cold War brought into our lives was the relentless space race between America and the Soviets. Who would be the first to orbit? Who would be the first to the moon? And perhaps as the ultimate goal, who would be the first to Mars? Although the Soviets were leading this relentless race, it came at a price. Since the 1960s, almost all of the Marsnik, Zond, and Cosmos series vehicles had either exploded on the launch pad or veered out of orbit and vanished into the depths of space. In fact, due to the frequency of these accidents, NASA engineers and space historians dubbed this repeating series of failures the Great Galactic Ghoul. According to their internal lore, it was as if a force protecting Mars was swallowing any uninvited guests that approached. In 1988, the Soviets made one last move to break this curse. This time, the goal was not just Mars, but its mysterious moons, Phobos and Deimos. Thus, the Soviet Phobos program began. There was no room for error this time. The project was a massive product of international cooperation, supported not only by Soviet engineering, but also by West Germany, France, Sweden, and even NASA's Deep Space Network. The ultimate goal of the mission was for the spacecraft to get very close to Phobos and deploy 2 landers. According to the planned scenario, Phobos 1 and 2 would approach within just 50 meters of the surface of Phobos in late March 1989. 1 jumping lander and 1 stationary module would be released to examine the moon's surface in detail. On July 7th and 12th, 1988, the twin satellites were successfully launched from the famous Baikonur launch pad, beginning a grand journey of approximately 130 million kilometers. Only 2 months into the journey, Phobos 1 accidentally shut down its orientation system due to a single faulty line of command sent from ground control. With its solar panels unable to face the sun, the vehicle exhausted its energy and drifted into the darkness of space in an eternal sleep. After this unfortunate accident, only Phobos 2 remained. It was no longer just a machine. It had become the pride of an entire nation in the space race. However, what would happen to it was far darker than its sibling's fate. In January 1989, at the end of its 130 million kilometer journey, Phobos 2 successfully entered the orbit of the red planet and began transmitting its first data. The data was perfect. Information regarding the Martian atmosphere, solar winds, and the interplanetary environment was shared with humanity. After spending 2 months in Mars's orbit, the spacecraft set its sights on its final target, the unusual moon Phobos, whose name means fear or dread in Greek. As the craft approached the moon, it began transmitting the clearest images of Phobos ever taken to Earth. Approximately 40 frames with a resolution of up to 40 meters were sent back. While Phobos 2 was taking photos and approaching the moon, the technical team behind the scenes was breaking into a cold sweat. You shouldn't think of Mars exploration like Earth-Moon or Earth-orbit missions. Depending on the orbits of Mars and Earth around the Sun, the distance varies between 100 and 300 million kilometers. Even if we take it as 150 million kilometers at the time of the mission, it takes 8 minutes and 30 seconds for radio signals traveling at the speed of light to reach the vehicle when you send a command. It takes just as long for the satellite to respond to you. In short, mutual communication takes at least 17 minutes at its fastest. To minimize risks, the main systems running the mission consisted of 3 main computers with a democratic decision-making mechanism. At least 2 computers had to vote yes for any command to be executed. However, the Mars curse unfortunately showed itself once again. When the spacecraft entered orbit, one of the 3 computers went completely silent, while the other 2 began transmitting faulty data. On March 27, 1989, the craft entered the position to approach the Moon. Per procedure, it temporarily cut its antenna connection with Earth to turn its high-resolution cameras toward the Moon. While everyone in Mission Control waited in tension for the spacecraft to wake up and send the successful mission photos, the silence began to stretch. Minutes turned into hours. But no news came from Phobos. NASA's Deep Space Network and Soviet stations turned their eyes toward Phobos, doing everything to catch a signal. At that moment, a terrible scream rose from Phobos. The dying spacecraft seemed to be sending a signal with its last bit of strength, as if trying to tell Earth what was happening to it. After this final breath, Phobos 2 went silent forever. However, the final message it transmitted to Earth contained an image that would cause those who saw it to fall silent in fear, just like Phobos 2. When Moscow Mission Control began examining the final telemetry data, things took a strange turn. It was understood that before the signal was lost, the satellite began to spin uncontrollably. Under normal circumstances, this was unexpected. If an object had hit the craft, it would have appeared as a violent exit from orbit or an explosion. But what happened to Phobos was likened to someone slapping it. When the final images taken by the satellite were examined, the photo that surprised everyone came to light. While Phobos 2's high-resolution camera was looking toward Mars during its rotation, it captured a layer of clouds, and the photo had captured the somber shadow of a massive, long, cylindrical object fallen across the Martian clouds. On March 30th, 1989, the famous Soviet television news program Vremya announced to viewers that an unidentified object had been imaged on the surface of Mars before Phobos 2 disappeared. According to the report, scientists described the dark shape in the photo as a thin ellipse approximately 20 kilometers long. Furthermore, it was emphasized that this mysterious shape was captured simultaneously by 2 separate cameras, including an infrared camera, and therefore could not be an optical illusion or a camera error. It was as if the spacecraft had witnessed something it wasn't supposed to see seconds after imaging this object, and something happened to it. Some Western scientists supporting the mission control team were also astounded by this extraordinary image. Dr. John Becklake from the London Science Museum reported that the Soviets saw something in the last photo that shouldn't have been there. According to Becklake, as Soviet scientists were downloading the image from Phobos 2's Mars-facing cameras line by line, an unexpected object appeared on the screen halfway through the photo. Confusion broke out at the control center in Moscow regarding what this object was, and the rest of the photo was not shown to the public by the Soviets at that time. Only a sentence used by the head of the Soviet Space Agency during an interview with Aviation Week and Space Technology magazine reached the press. In one of the last frames, there seems to be a strangely shaped object in the space between the spacecraft and Mars. These words were actually a hesitant confirmation from an official source. Although the Soviets could not yet explain what happened to Phobos 2, the fuse for speculation about the strangely shaped object imaged at the last moment was lit. Another leaked frame is the last photo showing the surface of the moon, Phobos. However, this photo also had strange lines and flashes covering the entire image. When these leaked photos and the vague, anxious comments from experts came together, Mars, already shrouded in legends, returned to the global agenda, peaking with the statements of Colonel Marina Popovich. While official statements couldn't provide a clear answer, various theories quickly emerged to fill the void. The most striking among these was the claim that Phobos 2 was destroyed by an extraterrestrial intelligence. In other words, many argued that the mysterious shadow seen in the final frames actually belonged to a UFO, and this massive spacecraft noticed Phobos 2 and eliminated it. Another person advocating this claim was the famous American author and conspiracy theorist Richard Hoagland. He is known for his books on the pyramidal formations in the Cydonia region and the famous Face on Mars, captured by the Viking spacecraft during NASA's Mars missions. Hoagland combined these final images from the Soviets with his own thesis, claiming that an advanced civilization once lived on Mars and that some of their systems are still operational today. He argued that the Soviet Phobos craft was destroyed because it got caught in one of these systems. Between these photos, the 1960s claim by Soviet astrophysicist Iosif Shklovsky that Phobos might be hollow and possibly an artificial satellite made by someone, and the information given to the press by the famous pilot Marina Popovich 2 weeks before the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Phobos anomaly became deeply popular. People began to think that Mars carries the traces of an ancient civilization, and that Phobos is an artificial space base built by that civilization. This thought continues even today. In 1998, when NASA's Mars Global Surveyor took new high-resolution images of Phobos, they discovered a monolith with edges so sharp they couldn't be natural. A massive tower, 85 meters high and 15 meters wide, stood on the moon with an unsettling artificiality. Naturally, people immediately thought of Stanley Kubrick's famous 1968 film, 2001, A Space Odyssey. In that film, a mystical black monolith was an alien technology that appeared at certain times on Earth and in the solar system, acting as a catalyst for our cognitive evolution. Now, a monolith like the one in the movie had appeared in the middle of Phobos. To top it off, after Buzz Aldrin, one of the first men on the moon, said on a television program, "There's a monolith on Phobos. Someone put that there. We should go there to understand life elsewhere in the universe." Mars and Phobos became a mandatory target for millions to discover an ancient alien civilization. Are all these claims true? Does an undiscovered ancient alien civilization really await us on Mars? Or is there a scientific explanation? Let's start with Marina Popovich's famous UFO shadow image. This photo was taken by Phobos 2's thermoscan device. The thermal scanner is a special camera that maps the surface temperature of Mars, combining visible light and thermal channels, and its operating principle is a technique called line scanning. The thermal scanner doesn't take a single frame photo. Instead, like a photocopier, it scans the surface line by line. As the vehicle moves rapidly in orbit, the shadow below also moves. When the scanning speed and the movement speed of the shadow combine, a serious distortion occurs in the image. The shadow of the source stretches and takes on a thin, long, cylindrical shape. So, the spacecraft hadn't actually filmed a UFO. It had filmed the shadow of the moon, Phobos falling onto a cloud on Mars. Because of the speed, this shadow appeared long and thin. In later years, the Mars Global Surveyor and Mars Express vehicles imaged the same shadow multiple times and confirmed with high-resolution cameras that it was the eclipse shadow of Phobos. The answer to why Phobos 2 began to spin is found in official reports as a logic error in the triple-redundant computer system. A computer failure caused the orientation control thrusters to fire incorrectly or lock up. The error prevented the remaining functional computer from saving the craft, and the vehicle spun around its axis, exhausting its batteries. However, Marina Popovich is not someone to be easily dismissed. She had a very successful career and was an important figure in the Soviet Union. After the Soviets collapsed, she wrote books claiming that many UFO records were destroyed in the archives and that various UFO remains were found in the country during the Soviet era. It would be wrong to say it's all true or all lies, because her words are the only source. If you're curious, you can translate her books with AI. They were originally written in German. As for Richard Hoagland and his Mars claims, he is not a very reliable source. Whenever such a situation arises, he immediately connects it to aliens or extreme theories and writes books. He has books on alien encounters related to the moon landing, but he generally takes things to the extreme. Setting Hoagland aside, the Cydonia region of Mars remains a mystery. Why are there pyramidal structures with sharp edges in the area? Why is there a structure claimed to look like a human face right next to it? Why is xenon 129 abnormally high, like the side effect of a nuclear war? And why does a monolithic structure stand upright on Phobos? Science has explanations for all of these, stating they are results of various natural events, and they are quite reasonable. Yet, humans also possess imagination and endless curiosity. We look for more specific answers where science makes generalizations. It's not quite possible to find those answers right now. But one day, when man travel to Mars begins, all these questions will be answered firsthand. Space is an infinity full of unknown secrets and mysteries. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please let me know in the comments and join me by subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video. Take care of yourselves.